That's that. I'm going to pop out, and Beckie is going to teach you guys some awesome stuff. Enjoy.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Beckie, as she said, and I'm a pediatric occupational therapist here at the Kireker Center for Child Development. Thank you so much for joining me today in this gross weather, which is actually a perfect day to talk about sensory play, because a lot of these things that I'm going to talk about today you can do right in your house. So just kind of to explain a little bit what sensory play is, it's just play that involves all different of your senses, your sense of touch, your sense of taste, smell, sight, hearing, and there's a couple other senses that are a little less known. The vestibular system, which kind of controls your balance and knowing where you are in space. So, for example, going on a swing, you get this kind of input that helps you kind of your body react to different changes in height, and it also helps with your balance. The proprioceptive system, which is in your joints, and it kind of gives you information about where you are in space and helps ground you. And the interoceptive system, which is a little less known, but it's a system that kind of tells you about what's going on inside your body. So am I hungry? Am I tired? Things like that. So sensory play has so many benefits for both children and adults. I'm sure some of you can think of a time when, for example, something that engaged your senses helped you with learning something. So for example, maybe you found a video helpful for remembering something. Sorry, I'm trying to get comfy here. For remembering something for a test, you found watching a video helpful because you were able to see it and hear it at the same time. And for babies and for children, it's the same thing. As I'm sure many of you know, babies are always exploring the world through their senses. So they're putting items in their mouth, and that's how they're first exploring the items. And from there, it has so many benefits. Sensory play can help with building cognition, actually. It helps solidify certain things, such as, for example, understanding relationships between things. For example, if, say, a child's playing with something frozen, like frozen ice cubes, like with little toys inside. So now they're kind of touching it and feeling the cold and realizing, oh, this is what cold is. And now I kind of can remember what something cold is and have a better idea. This is the word cold, and have a concept. This is what it felt like when it was cold. Sensory play can help children better regulate themselves, which basically means to calm themselves down. Engaging in play like with Play-Doh. I don't know if some of you have heard of sensory bins, which I'm going to go over soon, but just feeling different textures can be very calming for children. And I'm sure many of you have heard of things like weighted blankets. Those are all can be very calming, depending on the child, but many children find them to be very calming. They can also help you address skills that are maybe less desirable for your children to work on. For example, say you have a child who absolutely hates using a spoon to eat cereal, and you really want them to use a spoon, but when they're eating cereal, they just don't want to do it. And during breakfast time, it becomes too much of a fight. You can work on this skill using something called a sensory bin. You can I'll show you later the one that I made, but you could put dried rice, dried beans, some spoons, some cups, and just have them work on scooping with a sensory bin. And that's actually very motivating. They're not using it to maybe scoop their cereal, but they are using it to work on that skill. And it can be a lot more motivating. Another skill that's you could work on through sensory bins is, for example, letter writing. So you can hide different letters inside the sensory bin, like say foam letters from a puzzle. And then you can have them do like a scavenger hunt kind of thing to look for the letters and practice writing them. And that's just a lot more fun than just saying, okay, now you have to write all these letters. It makes it more interactive and a lot more fun. Another thing that sensory play helps you with is it can help prevent food aversions later in life. So for example, if a child doesn't engage in playing with different textures, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to develop food aversions, but it can be one of the factors that leads to it. For example, if you're not able to touch a food, like say oatmeal, something kind of sticky, then you probably won't be able to, or have a desire to put it in your mouth, and the texture won't really feel as safe to you. Whereas if you're able to play with it and realize it's safe, it's fun, then you're more likely to actually eat this food So that's super important with fruits and vegetables and some food that are a little more mushy, like applesauce. So sensory play has so many benefits. And also in terms of other skills, such as problem solving, language skills, sensory play can be really helpful in developing those skills as well. Okay, so I wanted to show you the sensory bin that I made. It's super simple. I didn't do anything crazy, but I think you guys can see it. So I put dried rice, dried beans, and some dried pasta. I tried to make a Valentine's Day theme. I don't know if you can kind of tell, but it's supposed to be pink and red colors. So I just threw them in plastic bags with a little bit of water and food dye and mixed it up. And they're fun because you can make them seasonal. You can make, I made this one supposed to be Valentine's theme, but you can make like winter theme. You could do so much with them, and you can really have so many items that you can use. So you can just say you have old rice that's about to go bad. You can throw it in a sensory bin, and I actually threw a different foam letter pieces in. So if I was going to use it with some of the kids I work with, I might have them, if I wanted to work on writing, I might have them look for the letters first and then work on writing it. And it kind of breaks up the task for kids who might find writing to be very boring or very hard. So that's something you could do at home. And it doesn't have to be anything too fancy or anything. Of course, you always want to supervise your child, even if they don't usually put things in their mouth. Sometimes with different, with new things that they haven't really played with, they might do something funky, like put it in their ear, their nose. So you always want to just watch them and make sure they're not doing anything funky with it. But other than that, you can have a lot of fun with them. And so you might be wondering, okay, that's all fine and good, but I have a baby. What am I going to do in terms of sensory play with them? Because they're going to just put everything right in their mouth. So there's actually a lot you can do with babies. You just have to make it you have to modify it to make it safer for them. So before you do these kind of activities, make sure that your baby's nails are nice and trim so that they can't scratch anything open. And I'll show you how I position it, but I do it in a certain way so that they can't really get their mouth on it to bite it open. So let me see if I can show you. So I made a couple of different sensory bags. So you can see it pretty well. So this one has water beads inside. So I just made the water beads in a bowl beforehand and just put them inside the bag. Okay, so this one, sorry, it's a little hard to see. This one has shaving cream and some food dye in it, just to add a little bit of color. And this one I tried to make a little Valentine's theme. I don't know if you could tell, it has candy hearts. And it has like those little things that you get like in an Easter basket that have those little like curly things. So once you put them in the plastic bag, and you could always make sure to double bag it to be extra safe. You don't have to tape it to the ground, but I like to do that just so they really can't get it to their mouth too easily. And it also can be used during tummy time. So let me see if I can show you. So they could be on their tummy and they're kind of playing with it, feeling it. It makes it a little more fun. And I always recommend to use the colored tapes, or make sure that the duct tape you use isn't the one that's going to stick to furniture. But this just makes it easy, and it's a way that babies can participate in sensory play without putting things in their mouth. And you can get really creative. You can put anything in these bags, really. You can put, say you have like old applesauce that's about to go bad. You can put that in. Anything mushy, anything. Doesn't even have to be. It could be like cereal. It could be anything that you want to try. Just, of course, always make sure you're supervising your baby, just in case it happens to get open or anything like that happens. But that's a really fun way. And you could even make like almost like an obstacle course or, for babies. So I can put these, a few of them on my floor so the baby can move from one to the other and play and feel them. Another thing you can do for sensory play for babies is use whipped cream. You can use whipped cream, you can use edible Play-Doh. They have some recipes for edible Play-Doh at home. Anything that can be ingested. You could do a lot with it. You can have them, you could do it on like a mirror surface, have them kind of use their hands to just like wipe it up and down. Anything really touching the shaving cream. So those are some ideas for sensory play that you can do with babies. So you may be thinking, okay, sensory play sounds fun and it has its benefits, but what about the big mess it's going to make? And I understand that because I don't like big messes either. It's a very valid point. So there are ways to just make it a little less messy and a little bit easier to clean. You can use clear shower curtains that you can get, like pretty cheap ones. Just lay them across the surface of the floor. And to make it even more unlikely that things can get past the barrier, you can set up pool noodles around it, kind of like make a little fence. And say you're using like dried beans, anything like that. This is kind of your messy area, so you can try to keep everything in the messy area. And it's harder for a child to really spill it over the barrier unless they were really trying to. So it just makes it a little easier to contain the mess. You can also use cling wrap. Just like cover your table with cling wrap, so then when you're done, you can just take the cling wrap off, throw it in the garbage. It's super easy. My favorite tip is to do it right before bath time in the bathtub itself. So it's contained in a bathtub. It's nice and contained that they can't really get everywhere if they're in the bathtub. And it's super easy to clean. So they can play with, say, shaving cream, finger paint in the bathtub, and then you just quickly wipe it down. And it's super simple. So that's one way to kind of keep the mess down a little bit because it can be overwhelming, especially people who don't like messes, which many people, of course, don't like messes. But I wanted to talk about two toys that I chose to demonstrate today, and actually two toys that you can win through the giveaway. And these toys actually do have sensory properties to them, but my original intent was I was thinking more about fine motor skills, but they just happen to have to do both. So that's why I really love these toys. So one toy that I had, they're Squigs. Oops, this way. Okay, they're Squigs. They're like silicone suction cups almost, so they really can work on the hand strength. I could show you. If you put them, you can put them together and pull them, and they're pretty resistive. So it's good for working on those hand strengthening skills. And they're actually fun because they do make a popping, especially when you're pulling it off a surface. They make a popping sound, and you feel the pop almost. So you feel it in your hand, and it makes it a lot more motivating and a lot more fun. And so these are sneaky ways to get your kid to work on a ton of skills. Fine motor skills, gross motor skills. So I'll show you an example. Say I wanted my child to work on reaching. They had like weak shoulders, weak arms, and I wanted them to reach. So I can put my Squigs up high and just have them pull it off from up high on the surface. And if you wanted to make it even harder for a child who's stronger but just needs a little bit more of a challenge, you could always put on wrist weights while you're doing this activity. So that's a good way to do it. And even sitting, I don't know if you could see, but I'm sitting on tall knees right now, and that's very good for your belly strength. So you could do it in tall knees position. You can do it on a peanut ball, which it might be a little hard to see, but say I had my belly over the peanut ball and I was just pulling it off any surface. Say I had a floor that was like a little harder, I can work on that. This ball is a little too small for me, but basically I would put my arms over the ball, and I can put it on the floor in front of me and work on pulling them off, pulling the Squigs off. So there's just so many skills that you can work on with the Squigs, and it's really motivating. Kids love these because they just like make a popping noise, so they're super fun. And the good thing about them is they stick to so many surfaces. So they stick to wall surfaces, they stick to mirrors, they can stick to, not carpet of course, but certain floors that are more like linoleum in nature. They can stick to foreheads, but I don't recommend it because it can leave a red mark. But they stick to so many things, which make it easy to adapt them and include them in activities. Another thing I wanted to show is how you can use them to work on fine motor skills like writing. So if I wanted to work on making a shape like a square, and it's really hard for my child to make a square, just doing it on a paper, it's something that they don't really love, they find very challenging. I can just put, let me see, you can see it okay? Oh, there we go. I could put 4 Squigs on there, to make the corners. Thank you. And then I just can connect them. I'm hoping you can see the marker, but I connect them to make the square. It's a little faint, but you get the idea. So I just drew a square using my squigs as kind of corners, and visual cues, so the kids know that these are where the corners are. And it's also cues, like tactile cues, we call them. So they're feeling with their hands. This is where one side is. This is where the other side is. You can do the same thing with making letters. They can make letters with it. They can make it in a line to make letter L, letter T. There's really a lot you can do with them. And even skills like recognizing colors and sorting, because the squigs come in pretty much every color of the rainbow. So it's very good for those kind of skills as well. And they also improve imagination. So working on like building skills, and they can keep kids entertained for hours because they can really connect them, make a really big chain, make a really big design with them. So the next toy I wanted to talk about is this book called the Polka Dot Book. There's all different stories. This one is a sea creature book, but they're board books, and they have, I don't know if you could see, like these little tiny bubbles, almost like bubble wrap. So you press them, they make a popping noise, and they give you that feedback through your finger, which I really love about it. So it makes reading books pretty fun for kids who might not be like babies, who might not be super interested in reading books with just hearing the book, but now they can be involved and they can touch it and play with it. So it makes it more interactive. It makes it really fun. And one reason I love these books, besides the feedback it gives your finger, is for the finger isolation skill, which is using one finger to poke something, which is something babies start to learn when they're about 12 months old. This is something that babies will start to do. So these books promote that, because to do it, I mean, babies have small fingers, so they can manage it with a few fingers, but if you kind of direct them and have them do one finger and show them how to do it and take their finger and do it, it can really help work on that skill. And it helps with language development, of course. These books are just super cute, colorful, and super fun, so I love them. So that's just a little intro into sensory play and how you can easily incorporate it into your day. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, but it can have a lot of benefits, and you yourself might find that you enjoy it more than you would think. You might find that you really love playing with water beads. You find it calming, because sensory play can be good for everyone, not just children and babies, but for adults too. So I encourage you to use sensory play whenever you can, because it has so many benefits and it's really easy and fun.
Yay! Awesome! That was so much information and so interesting. So I know that myself and my colleagues over in the community health department, we love playing with Play-Doh. So I will sometimes make Play-Doh for our toddler time programs, and I'll make extra for us in the office because we just love to squeeze it. And I feel like it's just like you were saying, it's a little sensory play for us adults. One question, so we have a couple minutes to take a couple questions, but one question that I think is important, you had mentioned sensory play is important to get kids to eat food. I turn everything into nutrition and food.
Yeah.
So it's super messy, but the other day I found my son not eating, but playing with his applesauce and rubbing it all over the table and then rubbing it all over his beautiful little face. But then after 10 minutes of that, he started eating it. Yeah. So I just felt like a perfect example of why letting them get messy and play a little bit leads to actually eating it.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And a lot of kids who do have trouble eating different things, eating different textures, that is the first step you do, is getting them to just play with it, just touch it, and not putting a lot of pressure on them to eat it, but just letting them do fun things with it, making it into like pictures. There's a lot of tons of fun things you could do, but it is very important to get them to touch it first and play with it.
My other tip for you were saying people don't like getting messy is to go rescue a dog, because that will help you with cleanup after the Cheerios and applesauce go all over your walls. Okay, so the first question was, what was the name of the book? So it's Polka Dot Who's in the Ocean is our answer here. Can we see it? Yeah, there we go. Awesome. All right, guys. So since you're here, if you want a chance to win our book and our squigs, which look awesome and so much fun, type in your favorite sea creature here, and you'll hear from me on Monday if you are our winner. All right. I don't see any more questions, so thanks for hopping on today. This was so interesting. Beckie, thank you so much for taking your time in the middle of an ice storm to hang out with us and let us come play with you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.